If you want some inspiration for your own wish list, stick around and I'll go through my 2023 plant wish list. Apologies in advance. This might end up becoming a costly video. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplant Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So I have heard all of you wanted an updated wish list video, and this is your update. So essentially this is my 2023 wish list video for plants, obviously. But I will preface this and say, based on the video that I did last year in terms of a wish list, and I will link it at the top there, this was a good year. And considering that I've done these kind of wish list videos for a while now, a lot of the times because I wasn't purchasing, a lot of the things that I had on wish list never really came to me. But I put the good juju out there, and as I always tell everybody, and I think I saw this in a video years ago, and it was so right, get your wish list out there. Get it out into the universe, so to speak. So if you've got an Instagram, put it on one of your stories and pin the stories to the top of your profile. I find the moment that that starts happening, you kind of put it out there and you're more likely to kind of come back to you and get it to a point where A, you can find the plant that you've been searching for and couldn't find, or B, get those plants that you really wanted for a price that you are comfortable with. Also, I found a lot of the times when you've got kind of your wish list somewhere up there, not just me who's got a YouTube channel or anybody else, but everybody else out there, it means that we've all got planty friends, and a lot of the times it's kind of this weird situation where we've all got plants, we've all got the plants that we want, but not everybody knows what they are. So actually having a really transparent wish list out there means that your planty friends might look at it and just go, ooh, I know that I want one of the plants in your collection, and you have a wish list of a plant that I've got in my collection. They're more likely to then potentially reach out to you and say, do you want to do swapsies? So I always say, put it out there and let the universe be what it is, basically. So yeah, quick rundown of what I got from my previous wish list, if I'm not mistaken. So I've got the Hoya now, so the Tesla plant. I have got the Monstera Burle Peru, my god. I have got the Spiritus Sancti. And what else has joined the ranks this year? I think I did end up getting the Palmata as well that I wanted, and many more, I think. I'm going to leave it at that because I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head what it all was, basically. So I know I had a few Hoyas. The Hoyas never really materialized, but there is, I think, at least one Hoya in this wish list video. But without further ado, and before everybody starts complaining that my intros are too long, let's dive into the first plant. So I've got a trusty iPad, and I will be adding a picture of the plant that I'm going to be talking about on the side here. Also, I hasten to say this is in no particular order. There's quite a few Anthuriums on here, so bear with me. So the first plant is the Anthurium papillilaminum. Papillilaminum? Papillilaminum. Oh, I like starting with difficult plant words. But this is a plant that a lot of people have probably seen crosses of. Very rarely does the species itself come up, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think it was because maybe people didn't have that many of the species in collection, or maybe it was being held back in order to hybridize. I'm not entirely sure, but there is more of a wave of the species itself coming out recently. And to be fair, as you can probably see with the picture, and I'm going to be blunt, there's nothing to necessarily write home about with this one. So it's an okay and a bit of an interesting looking Anthurium, but is it truly that unique compared to some of the other Anthuriums? Probably not, in my humble opinion. Now you might be asking yourself, why is it on the wish list? It's on the wish list because it's a plant that I have wanted to not only see but potentially own because of that strong history of hybridization that it's had, and I'm really curious to see what the species itself is like. So it's more of a scientific kind of interest that I have to it, more so than the I need to have it because I think that plant is beautiful. However, it still makes my wish list for 2023. And for the people that were here last year for this video, this is one that you have seen before, and it's still on the wish list for good reason, mainly because I still don't have it in my collection. So this is the Anthurium wendlingeri. Again, I will add a picture here. I think the picture that I found is quite a juvenile picture. If I can find a more mature picture, I will add it in. But essentially, it is a strappy leaf Anthurium that has got a chance to get quite large strappy leaves. But the big thing with this one is that kind of almost like a pigtail corkscrew kind of inflorescence, which I think is quite unique. You do get it on some of the cheaper, kind of more colorful Anthuriums, the ones that most people, the Andrianums, I think, or kind of similar ones. You get some that are not exactly an Andrianum in the shops, and they can have a bit of that inflorescence that curls a bit, not to the same level as the wendlingeri, but it is one that I still want to get in my collection. A lot of you, and I mean a lot of you, have reached out to me and said, look, it's here and it's available here, and I'm aware. It's come a bit more onto the market in the last 2 to 3 months, I would say. I just still haven't had a chance to add it to my collection at this particular moment in time. I don't know where I would put it. This is the case for most of these plants, if I'm being completely honest. But it is one that I still want, just purely because I've wanted it for such a long time that I would eventually like to take that off the wish list. So the Anthurium wendlingeri is still on the wish list for this year, and I think this is the only one that I've kind of kept on there, if that makes sense. So this is an interesting Anthurium actually, and I'm not entirely sure. I think this might have been, there's a couple on this list that I think the names are ringing bells, so I'm wondering whether or not when we did the collab with North, whether or not some of these are the plants that North actually got as well. And North, if you're watching this, hi. Do give me a shout out down below if some of these are, and I don't mean to steal your thunder, but they're plants that I kind of had looked at before. Having seen some of your video, if they're ones that I'm thinking they are, I'm definitely impressed. And I think, like a lot of you have said, I do need to start going on some of these live sales, especially when it comes to companies like Equigenera, because you can kind of see these plants a bit more. There is a very good reason why I don't go on those plant sales, the live ones, because as you can imagine, I have got zero self-control at the best of times. Can you imagine what would happen if I went onto one of those lives? But sorry, without further ado, the plant that I'm adding this year into the wish list is the Anthurium, and I'm looking down because names, Anthurium nigrolaminum Gigi. Can you tell why I like it? Those leaves, oh, and it's dark as well. I think the images that I'm finding, it almost looks like it's got a bit of an iridescence, so I wonder whether or not it's not an entirely kind of like leathery feel to the leaf, and whether or not there's a tiny bit of pubescence and tiny bit of like fuzz on that leaf. But it is beautiful, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm pretty sure this might be a species and not a hybrid. I tried a lot to not add any hybrids. I think there's maybe 1 or 2. But yeah, this one, oh, there's another one that's quite similar, but some point soon, this will be added to the collection. Oh, and as if it was kind of meant to be, I don't know, I didn't realize that I had both of them back to back. So the other one on the list is the Anthurium nigrolaminum. I don't know how PC this name is, by the way, but it's the name that I'm finding it under. I think there was, yeah, I think that's it. But so maybe the other one that we were looking at before maybe might have been a hybrid actually, possibly, or maybe it was a different form of the same plant. But the Anthurium nigrolaminum, stunning. I mean, same, those leaves, those kind of long kind of leaves. I think I'm kind of getting to the point where I kind of know a bit more what I'm looking for in plants these days. And I have to say, I've probably moved away from those kind of big heart-shaped leaves that you get a lot of the times with a lot of aroids, both philodendrons and anthuriums. I do still like them, don't get me wrong, but some of these more strappy leaves are really kind of talking to me at the moment. If they've got a bit of texture as well, so much the better. Less fussed on the velvetiness. I know there's a big audience out there for velvety leaves. I find for the level of like issues that potentially velvety leaves can cause me in my environment, it's not worth it basically. But something like this, very cool. Following on in a similar theme, you can tell that like I'm kind of getting a bit more what I was saying there, a type, specifically when it comes to anthuriums. So, and this is one that I keep seeing on the Ecuagenera website, and it has gone into my basket and out of my basket for all 3 of the recent purchases that I had. And I don't know why. It's slightly on the pricier side for them, and usually I'm just like, I need to get rid of something from there that will actually bring down the cost by a chunk. So it's usually this one that goes, but I do want to get this. And this is the Anthurium longissimilobum. Longissimilobum. Oh, I mean, oh, those leaves, and they've got those kind of ears at the top, and it's a very kind of pronounced sinus, and there's a bit of like kind of, from what I can see, I'm also looking at the image down on my iPad as well, I can see a bit of texture, kind of I'm getting a bit of Esmeralda dense vibes, and it's, I think if I had to choose between the last 3 that I just talked about now, the Gigi, the nigrolaminum, and this one, and I could only choose one, I think this would be the one that I would go for more so than any of the other 2. Basically, this one for me it ticks a lot of the boxes, basically. Now, coming on to another Anthurium, but coming on to one that for the longest period of time I thought is what I owned. And I'll see if I can bring it down. Is it? It's just been watered. I'll see if I can add a picture here, basically. But this is the plant that I have called a metallicum because that's what I bought it under. I have then called it a magnificum because I thought it might have been a magnificum. A lot of people are just like, it's probably a hybrid. What hybrid it is, I don't know. But this is the species. So Anthurium metallicum is one that is now going on my wish list. Similar thing to everything else, it's kind of slightly longer, and I didn't realize it actually grows quite narrow and long. It might just be the image that I found. But, and actually saying that, no, I did find a more mature image and it does get a bit wide. But it's definitely one that I want. And I know that this isn't one that you always come across quite easily. And I would say, based on the pictures that I'm seeing now and based on how dramatic the regale is, because I, since this year, have joined it dropped all of its leaves and went back down to a stump, and now it's got 1 leaf again. So it's at least got a leaf. It came back, basically, so that's fine. But yeah, I get what everybody's talking about with that one. It is a beautiful plant, and it is very beautiful when it gets the massive, massive leaves, but in my experience a bit, and based on what a lot of people are saying, a bit unreliable, basically, or maybe not as easy to care for as people maybe originally thought a few months or years back, basically. So the metallicum, I think, isn't quite as fussy, basically. So I would love to get that. And again, another layer of reason why I would like to get that is to actually compare it to the one that I purchased as a metallicum from a private seller, to kind of say, okay, no, it really isn't a metallicum, or it might be a hybrid of the metallicum with something else. So yeah, that would be one that I would, yeah, really quite like to add to my collection. Coming into a philodendron, and I know that this is one that a lot of people have purchased over the years, and it's not that difficult to find, and the reality is it's not as expensive as it used to be, but the Philodendron luxurians. So And this is an interesting one because I was never that keen on it. I'm very curious because I think this is the one, I got this one confused with the El Choco or the Rubra Juvenile. So this is the one that I thought was the case with the El Choco, which needed a lot of water all the time. Basically, it's actually, I'm pretty sure it's the luxurians. And I wasn't that keen on it, and I know that they can look similar-ish to the El Choco. Now that I do own the El Choco Red, I would like to get the luxurians as well. I'd just like to try it. And I know it's not the easiest of philodendrons, and I know that probably if I buy it from abroad, which is probably what's going to happen, it will probably throw a temper tantrum. It might go back to stump entirely, and I might have to kind of grow it from that again, which is what I had to do anyway with my El Choco. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, so I thought, well, let's add the luxurians into the wish list for this year. Moving on to a Monstera that I was debating whether or not to put it on the wish list. Now, there's a reason why I was debating it. Do not get me wrong, and by the way, I'm talking about the Monstera Burle Marx Flame. Don't get me wrong. Do I think this plant looks beautiful? Yes. Do I think the even more mature version of the plant, even from this picture that I'm showing, is even more beautiful? Yes. Do I like the fully juvenile kind of like solid leaves that you usually will get these plants at most of the time? No. Do I like the fact that, from what I've heard from everybody, is that it's an exceptionally slow growing plant? No. So I was in two minds as to whether or not to add it into my wish list. The problem was with that is every time I hear mention of it, I find pictures of it, the more mature, so as soon as it starts getting those splits on the leaves, I'm just like, I always swoon, and I'm just like, so beautiful. So it had to go on the list. Will I pay some of these ridiculous prices that are out there at the moment? No. Do I maybe understand some of these ridiculous prices based on what everybody's saying on how slow growing this plant is? Yes. So it's going to be one of these things that it might come into my care in a few months or years' time, and I'm okay with that. I don't think I'm going to lose that look at that plant vibe that I have for this one. So it does deserve a place in my wish list video. Swinging back to an Anthurium. There's more Anthuriums than I thought at the moment on this wish list, and it's interesting because I went down to the rare plant market event in London and I saw a lot more Anthuriums there than philodendrons. And I'm wondering whether or not people have experienced a lot of the philodendrons that generally have come onto the market now, and most people that couldn't get some of them have now got the ones that they wanted. And the Anthurium kind of genus is opening up a bit more for people that are into trying something different and different looking. And to this point as well, depending on the people that have had plants for a long enough period of time, and I know Anthurium is kind of like a bit of a step up from a philodendron, most people are kind of there at this point in time. So it's really quite encouraging to see more of the Anthuriums coming onto the market. And actually, I will say, I was hesitant with Anthuriums for a long period of time, but because by and large, they have got quite chunky roots. And now that I know that they absolutely love being in semi-hydro and the coarse semi-hydro mix that I have from Soil Ninja, or even when I had them in Choose Upon, and how much easier it is to care for them that way, got no problem to get all of the Anthuriums if I can, basically. So this is the plant that I thought I was buying when I got my Anthurium pedatum. What I was actually after was the Anthurium pedatoradiatum, basically. Yeah, pedatoradiatum. And again, this is another one that North already had. He wasn't unboxing this, but he had it in the background. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's so pretty. And I've only really ever seen pictures of it. And even then I loved it. But I think when North actually brought it up and showed it to the camera, I'm just like, oh no, I still like this plant. Where I would put this plant, I do not know. But for the people that have been around for some of the unboxings recently, you can see that I'm also getting into some of these plants that are kind of that umbrella feel, so, or fingers, like multiple leaves on kind of one petiole almost. So this is giving that kind of vibe. And I did listen to what North has said, and I think a lot of other people said it as well. It's not the easiest of plants. Interestingly, the pedatum is possibly one of my easiest anthuriums, hands down. So, but it's not quite the same vibe, basically. And I think there's another one as well called the pterodactyl, which might be a cross between the pedatum or maybe the pedatoradiatum with something else. That one's also quite cool. Moving on to a philodendron that a lot of people might be surprised I still don't own. And as far as I'm aware, and because I know I've got a large audience that's based in the States and in Canada, and I think this might be slightly easier for all of you to get out there, at least in the UK, this doesn't come up that often. It's coming to the market a bit more these days, but it's still holding its price, is the Philodendron Florida Beauty. So for me, the way that I look at it is kind of like the variegated version of the pedatum. The pedatum I've had for a long time now. It's its own little tree, basically the Philodendron pedatum. And it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but the Florida Beauty is one that I have always been curious about. So that is why it is on this list for now, basically. I still love my Florida Ghost, and I don't think that's ever going to change. That's still a plant that keeps my interest going. Am I head over heels as I was when I first bought it? Probably not, but we're in a comfortable relationship. It's a long-term relationship now. The honeymoon period is over. Swinging back to a Monstera. So this one is the Monstera subpinnata, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the Monstera subpinnata. And again, I do have a thing for these kind of palm-like leaves. So this one's quite an interesting one, and I kept seeing it come up most of this summer on Ecuagenera website. I think Grow Tropicals had it as well. A few other of the plant stores in the UK had maybe got a handful of these. And every time I keep seeing it, I'm just like, oh, I really should get that. I really like that. And I never did. And it's now pretty much out of stock everywhere. So this might be one that I will try to get into my care soon. Now, there is going to be another video that's hopefully going to come out at the same week as this one is going to. Whether or not that one's going to come out first or this one, I don't know. But I listened to the advice of a lot of people, not advice, but kind of suggestions from a lot of people when I did my plant peeves video, where a lot of you said, okay, these are all plant peeves about maybe the community or about shops and all these things. We thought you were actually going to roast certain plants. And I'm just like, my brain did not even go there. Guess what video is coming out the same week as this one? I will be roasting some plants. One of them has got similar vibes to this, so I don't know whether or not that video would have come out already or it's going to come out, but watch this space, basically. We'll go into non-Monsteras, philodendrons, and anthuriums now. So the first one, which is an interesting one, and I've had this in my wish list in one form or another for a long period of time. I just didn't always have the name for it. I thought I got it when I got the, and I cannot remember what the botanical name is, the Manihut grami, the hardy tapioca, basically. But actually what I was looking for is the snowflake tree or the snowflake Aralia. And hold on, I'm going to put a picture here. Beautiful leaves that literally look like the kind of snowflakes that you used to cut out usually around the holidays in the winter with paper and all these things. Oh, this plant is beautiful. It very rarely comes up on the market. It's not one that is the usual kind of arrow that everybody's into, but this always kind of like captured my attention. And you know me, I do like my weird plants still that are not the usual aroids that everybody at least is partially aware of. So this is definitely on my wish list, and hopefully at some point soon I might add it to my collection. Two more to go. So the next one is a Hoya. I did promise you it was going to be a Hoya in this one. And again, following on the theme of slightly weird and kooky, it's the Hoya undulata. Picture here. I kept seeing pictures of this plant and I'm just like, I don't know. It looks sick. And I think I saw somebody had a cutting of this possibly at one of the plant swap events, and I don't know like which one it was which was one of the two that I went to basically. But I saw it, and it's one of those plants again that kind of stuck in my brain, and even back then I'm just like, oh, it's a bit funky. I'm going to lean into the funk, so to speak, and just kind of go, I think I like this. I think it looks kind of interesting. It does look a bit like it's been irradiated. It looks weird. I don't know, it's for me from kind of like when I was still a kid and maybe living in Cyprus, where you do get those really super hot days that you're almost feeling like you're in the desert, and you see some of these plants that are just literally on the corner of the road looking like they've gone crispy and it's all a bit too much. This plant is permanently like that. So I don't know, I think maybe that's why I've got a bit of a kindredness to this. But yes, the Hoya undulata is one that if I do come across it at a reasonable price, I would love to get. I'm pretty sure looking at this plant, it's not going to be a fast grower in the slightest. And even for a Hoya, I would assume this is a slow grower. But it looks kind of cool. And this is the kind of plant that I would love to see in a big format. Hopefully maybe what we will see a bit more coming into the next few months or even years, now that some of the rare plants prices have dropped down to the level that they have, is maybe getting bigger specimens of some of these plants. And I would love to be able to have options, at least for some of the Hoyas, to spend a bit more and get a bigger, more established plant rather than spending the 20 or 30 Great British pounds that most of these things tend to be around. I know some of them are much more expensive than that, for like a 2-leaf rooted cutting. It's one of those things for some of these Hoyas that are truly quite stunning, and I know they can take a long time. If somebody was to turn around and say, we want kind of low 3 figures for that, I might consider it at that point, because there is something about getting a very established, older kind of Hoya that is quite interesting. Whether or not it's going to happen, I don't know. And this doesn't just apply for Hoyas. I mean this across the board. So philodendrons, monsteras, all of these things. So yeah, I know sometimes the reason why they don't do this is the level of cost that they would need to price some of these things at would probably be off-putting for a lot of people, but it'd be interesting to see if that will come onto the market soon and whether or not those prices might drop ever so slightly. So yeah. And finishing with a plant, which again, some people might be surprised that I don't have yet in my collection. I don't have a lot of these types of plants in my collection. And I'm going to talk about a fern. Can you guess which one it is? So is it the blue oil fern, the Microsorum thailandicum? And I know everybody really wants this or has this in one way or another. I think Kaylee Ellen also did a video recently that had this as a thumbnail. I still need to watch that. But I do like this plant. I've liked it for a while. It's quite an interesting looking plant. I'm not that fussed about the blue thing, but I do love the fact that it's a fern that, for lack of better words, doesn't look like a fern. It's quite thick leaves. I think it's almost quite succulent. So I'm just like, ooh, weird and kooky. I am here for that. But yeah, that is my updated 2023 wish list. Did any of those surprise you? More importantly, do you own any of those? And do you want to tell me down below what it's like kind of raising them or kind of like growing them out, essentially? Because I'm very curious if you know that some of these plants are they're a bit hardcore, they're a bit difficult to kind of keep happy. I would love it if you could let me or everybody else know down in the comments down below. Thanks. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to cover on this. Apologies if I have added plants to your wish list, because I know last time I did this, everybody was just like, oh no, and I'm so sorry. But I know a lot of people want to know this, so I do the video finally. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.